You are listening to the Centropic Oracle, an audiobook podcast of science fiction and fantasy short stories that make you think and feel. The Lake Surrounds by K.T. Wagner. For years, I dreamed about Pine Lake, and 3 weeks ago, we finally moved into the lakeside cottage that haunted my sleep. There's something about being in this place, a crawling sensation I can't shake, memories I can't quite grab onto. They burrow under my skin and scratch at my insides. Nothing is as I remember. Maybe my husband, Bob, is right, and I'm just having trouble adjusting to a new home and community after 42 years. Tea time used to be my favorite break in the day, a chance to relax and unwind and dream. I swirl the dregs of my mid-morning tea and stare across the kitchen to where Bob leans over the sink and rinses his mug. But I'm not looking at him. I'm watching the lake water splash and sparkle over his hands. My grandparents previously owned this cottage, and my memories of spending summers with Grandma are happy ones. I don't recall Grandpa. He wasn't often home. After he drowned, a boating accident, I think, my parents stopped letting me visit the cottage, and Grandma refused to leave the lake. I never saw her again. Grandma willed the cottage to me, but even owners can't move in until they turn 60. Retirement village rules. The monthly rental income came in handy. The village managed everything, and the money helped us be ready of the day of my 60th birthday, 3 weeks past. Bob describes our new routine as companionable. I liked it better when he went to work every day. Now he's underfoot a lot. Before we moved in, Bob purchased a pair of hideous orange Muskoka chairs. "They're iconic, Evie," he said, and positioned them on the deck facing the water. Last night, the purple and red sky reflected along the inky surface of the lake. Bob insisted on holding my hand, our arms stretched between the Muskoka chairs like love-struck teenagers. I squirmed in discomfort. It felt like the lake watched and disapproved. Near the shore, a large head-like shape surfaced before sinking back into the water. Monster, I thought. Bob explained it away. Likely a beaver or small moose. I only half listened to him. The neck was too long. A sturgeon, then. They do this thing called tail walking and can live for hundreds of... I stopped listening. Bob loves to explain things. Having Bob underfoot every day is wonderful, really. It's just going to take time to adjust. If I feel a bit suffocated, it's only because, since the kids moved out, I've grown used to spending my days alone. Bob tosses his keys onto the table and kisses my forehead. I smile and squeeze his hand. He shouts for our lab cross. "Zipper, time for a walk." Ears up, 60 pounds of blonde dog bounds into the kitchen. Wearing a rather dumb, expectant look, he plunks himself in front of Bob. Each morning after tea, the three of us walk the half-mile to the community mailbox. The dog has never warmed up to me, and the feeling is mutual. I suppose he's cute enough and endearing in his own way, but I've always preferred cats. Bob snaps on Zipper's blue leash. That's odd. He's damp. Back in the city, Zipper always got into things. I shrug. It's a sign he's settling in. He's been scared of his own shadow since we arrived. You know it's a waste of time for both of us to collect the mail every day. I suggest alternating, but Bob will have none of it. I like our little walks. Remember what the caretaker said about traveling in pairs? Come on, Evie. You wouldn't want to leave me out there alone. He winks. I roll my eyes and force a laugh. You're being overprotective. Mrs. Barnaby is as nervous as Zipper, and her daughter Alice appears to be a little slow. Mrs. Barnaby and her daughter are also the only residents to display any friendliness towards us. We've only seen the names of other residents on the post boxes, and glimpsed a few in their yards or on their decks. All women. Perhaps they'd be a little more approachable if Bob wasn't always around. I miss my friends from back home. Bob's cell phone buzzes against the counter where it's plugged in. Likely his old work pestering him again. I try to keep from clenching my jaw and fists. They need to learn to live without Bob, and he needs to learn to ignore them. It's ridiculous to be so on edge, I chide myself. Besides, if he leaves, I can take one of the boats out. The lake calms me. 2 communal paddle boats are tied to a small dock tucked away at the bottom of a path through the woods. Alice whispered to me about them while her mother chatted with Bob. The boats are turquoise blue, my favorite color. Time floats away while my legs pump the pedals, the slap of paddles against the water soothing. I always have to force myself to return to shore. I haven't told Bob about the boats. He'd just want to join me. I only go out when he drives back to the city for some emergency at his former office. City people, so demanding. I chuckle to myself. Seems I'm starting to feel at home here after all. Bob peers at the call display on his phone. It's Larry. I need to take it. I'll try to be quick. He lifts a hand in apology before disappearing into the den. It's a fine, sunny day. I lean against the screen door and stare out at the lake. The water ripples, even though the air is dead still. I'm halfway across the deck before realizing I've moved. These tiny losses of time are disconcerting. 2 lots down, Mrs. Smith, according to the mailbox, works in her garden. Her purple straw hat is just visible through a gap in the trees. For a moment, she stops what she's doing and stares directly at me. There's something vaguely familiar about the woman. Zipper whines softly and nudges my thigh. It's silly to wait for Bob. I'll be gone and back before he finishes gabbing on the phone. I twist my long gray hair into a bun, clip it into place, grab keys and Zipper's leash, and hurry out the door. The air smells of cut grass and pine resin with an undernote of wet rot. For a moment, a faint breeze wafts the scent of the lake to me, then all is still again. Zipper hesitates and backs up, his tail low. A stab of unease makes me turn back and lock the door. I yank on Zipper's leash and pull him down the driveway and onto the road. Dappled light shines through the high canopy of maples. As we walk by, Mrs. Smith is leaning against her cottage, watching us. I smile and wave, but her expression remains impassive. Strange woman. Dog in tow, I stumble along. Heel! I don't mean to snap, but Zipper's behavior is getting on my nerves. The worn asphalt road snakes along in front of the cottages scattered along the lake's edge. The road doesn't quite follow the shape of the shoreline. Deciduous trees give way to tall evergreens. They flank the pavement, trimmed just enough to maybe allow 2 small cars to squeeze past each other. A creek bubbles out of sight. Abruptly, Zipper cuts in front of me, stops, and leans against my legs, whining. Patting his tawny head, I wish I'd left him with Bob. What's up, Zip? He shivers under my hand. Come on, scaredy cat. I march forward, yanking on his leash, and he follows, sticking close. A faint breeze ripples through the forest and caresses my cheek. Touching my face and hair, I discover both are damp, almost wet. A rustle from the direction of the creek, and I whirl. Nothing. Zipper's nerves are affecting me. A sound like a small waterfall. Odd. Bob and I walked this way many times and didn't note it. Perhaps it's because Bob never stops talking when we go for walks. There aren't any lakeside cottages on this stretch, and the road curves close to the lake. The edge of the asphalt gives way to a rocky bluff. A few stunted and gnarled pines cling to it, and 20 feet below the water shines navy blue and silver. A dark shape moves under the surface. I lean forward to get a better look, and the urge to dive sweeps through me. Zipper barks. I step back onto the road feeling like I've misplaced something. The heat of the day presses against me as we trudge down the road. Around the next bend, an ancient stooped woman stands on her porch, staring at the lake. Long gray hair ripples down her back. 2 doors down, another woman hunches over a broom and sweeps her driveway. They look like sisters, and there's a resemblance to Mrs. Smith. A mound of black fur is curled up on the pavement next to the second woman. On our approach, the dog lifts its head, sniffs the air, and goes back to sleep. "Hello," I call out. The woman looks up and past me, her hands not breaking the rhythm of the sweep. The collar around the dog's neck is pink. I almost laugh. Of course it's a girl. Zipper cocks his head but appears not to notice his fellow canine. I wave and smile. She doesn't respond. My face flushes with heat. My new neighbors are downright rude. The road curves again and rises. The undergrowth thickens. The red metal roof of the mailbox shelter looms where the road dead ends, like a fresh blood stain against the green of the forest. Halfway up the hill, rivulets of water snake across the asphalt, moving towards us. Perhaps water from a garden sprinkler is spilling onto the street. Zipper puts his nose down. I expect him to try and drink, but he doesn't. At the mailboxes, I fish in my pocket for the key. "Mum's worried about you." The soft voice startles me. Brandishing keys, I spin about. Alice watches from a few feet away. Her long blonde hair is wet and tangled with black-green water weeds. "You shouldn't be out here with him." She points at Zipper. "The lake has noticed. They should stay inside." "Where's your mom, Alice? Let me just grab my mail and I'll walk you home." I require 2 hands to open the box. "Sit. Stay," I say to Zipper. Zipper's well-trained when he wants to be. I drop his leash and retrieve the mail. Turning back, I find myself alone. "Zipper? Alice?" I call and call, but there's no sign of the girl or the dog. In the middle of the road, I listen intently. A sigh of wind whispers through the forest, and the faint rush of creek water beckons. I start toward the water. A far-off yelp. I run back down the road and around the curve, calling for Zipper. The black dog waits at the end of its driveway. The old woman stands behind it, a smile crinkling her face. "Welcome to the neighborhood." Out of breath, I ask after Zipper. "He might have come by here with Alice?" "Likely headed home," the woman replies with a soft laugh. "The males tend to do that. Either that or they embrace the lake and don't return. It's for the best." She turns back to her sweeping. A moist breeze licks at my legs. "What exactly do you mean?" I ask, voice shaky. A forgotten memory stirs. From the direction of the lake, a mist rolls across the road. Through a gap in the trees, I see the monster again rising from the dark waters. Its horse-like head and long serpent neck undulate and then pause. Its feral gaze meets mine, and it turns in the direction of our cottage, disappearing beneath the surface of the lake. The wind picks up. Heart hammering my ribs, I sprint for home. Water splashes under my feet. Waves build and break across the lake. Lungs burning, I gasp for air and pound up the driveway. I glance back along the shoreline. At the base of a tree near the bluff, a flash of blue. "They left." Alice is behind me. She's no longer wet, not a trace of weeds in her hair, and her expression is impassive. Confusion rolls over me. Am I hallucinating? Fumbling with the keys, I try to fit one into the cottage door. It isn't locked or even closed, and I fall into the kitchen. Scrambling onto my knees, I call their names. "Bob? Zipper?" A puddle of water on the floor. In the middle, Bob's cell phone. I remember. A similar scene more than 5 decades ago, as a girl with my grandma. I gulp air and rock back and forth. "No, no, no." "Keffeldur. The locals call her Nessie. We protect her," Grandma explained long ago. Her eyes shone with tears and something else. She sat at her vanity brushing out her long, gray hair. "Evie, you are part of the sisterhood, even though your mother refuses to accept it. You will have to one day. The lake is in our veins." It was the day after Grandpa drowned. We hope you enjoyed The Lake Surrounds by K.T. Wagner, read by Larissa Thompson. If you'd like to learn more about the author and narrator of this story, or make a donation to them, follow the story page link in the description. Pledge your support to us on Patreon for cool rewards and to help us bring you more stories. If you would like to submit a story for consideration or apply to be a narrator, a link to our submission guidelines is in the description.